bubbling, coming in, crushing this art. Hey, we're back in it again with the last sign of spring, Gemini. So, initially, Gemini rising. This would be a mutable person. So this would be someone, even if their Saturn, their Sun, their Moon is in a fixed sign and they have a solid way of going about things, they always want to find a new way to do that. They always want to be receptive and learning kind of new ways to be about that, right? They don't want to just stay in that one place, and if they do want to stay in that one place, they want to figure out new ways to stay in that one place. So, yes. So, right off the bat, this would be someone I feel like who gets lost easier than any other sign. Let me explain. Or any other sign that we've dealt with so far. So, Aries, right? Ruled by Mars. It's almost like they know what they want. Initially. Taurus, ruled by Venus. They know what they want. And then Gemini, ruled by Mercury, they have no idea what they want. They just want to play with stuff. So, intellectually, right? Like, this is someone that just kind of wants to be like a knower of all, master of none, right? So yeah, they wouldn't really have necessarily any like pre-configured deep attachments. Like, well, it depends obviously on their sun, moon, and like their planetary alignments, right? But this would be someone that's generally just like more cold and less like less deep. So, but right at the bat, if we look at their 7th house, this is Sagittarius, right? So it's almost like, because they're coming at it from this sort of like, it doesn't matter, you know, we could do this or that perspective, they get caught up into a lot of things. They actively, like, they end up doing a lot of things with their, or letting it go too far with their relationships, right? So there'd be a lot to learn from that. Like, mutable fire, Sag, and mutable water, Pisces, are where you learn from you. Because once you go through a deep emotional experience that you just kind of got sucked into and didn't necessarily see coming, or same with a deep emotional experience that you didn't get sucked into but you didn't see coming because you were just following the light, right? Then you're going to end up bringing your own reasoning and meaning out of that. You're going to end up attaching your own, like, whoa, we went through that, and then you're going to have your way of relating to that, and that will teach you about yourself. So that's why Jupiter is like the teacher, plus fire and water being the most volatile. I wouldn't say water is volatile, but I'll just say it's more fluid, right? So when we have the fluid of the fluid, Pisces, and we have the fluid, the mutable of the fire, Sag, this just experiences more deeply than any other sign. Like, they get caught up in more new stuff, whereas Virgo would get caught up like dissecting stuff that's been, right? Or say, or yeah, Gemini would get caught up just kind of playing with thoughts, right? It wouldn't, Virgo could get hurt, right? Virgo could get hurt by things breaking down on them, but that would be more of like a melancholy, and then we got to learn how to fix that again, right? Gemini would get hurt in a more so like their thoughts are completely opposing. Like, what do I do right now? You know, it's not really like a hurt, it's more like a splitting. Whereas Sag and Pisces will get sucked up into experiences that either burn them or from the inside or the outside. Like, either they get burned because they did something, or they get burned because they were emotionally connected to something, inside or outside. So anyway, so this could be someone that initially comes at it from a shallow place, but because they get lost into a lot of experiences with their relationships, they learn a lot from that, more than other people, because they were allowing themselves to be freer, so they just got caught up in more shit. Alright. So now if we go to the 4th house, Virgo, which makes sense, they're Gemini rising, where they feel most comfortable is just in the understanding and the fixing, rebuilding, just kind of the understanding over how things work and how they play a role. So it's like someone at home that just likes to get back to breaking things down, likes to get back to building their mini picture of the city, right? Like a direct correlation, right? It has that logic behind it. It has that solidity, the realness. So yeah. And then if we look at how this person expressed themselves, okay, the 5th house, just come with me. So this would be Libra. So they express themselves through calm, cool, and collected ideas that look pleasant, right? It's ruled by Venus. It's going to be idea that they attach to, right, in the moment. Also, this is going to be something that makes sense, the Saturn behind it, right? So they are trying to express themselves in logic that they find appealing. Whereas if you go to the 9th house or the 8th house, what they're keeping behind closed doors, this is Capricorn. Once they're developing a new structure, once they're being a big dreamer, this is not what they express. But once they finally get to know that new structure, right, that's something that if you do get into their home life, they'll be able to break down for you if you get into their inner circle, right? So anyway, so yeah, it's almost just that, like, Gemini understands mutability. It understands when things aren't solid, right? So that's why I think before, when it's originally developing a structure, 8th house Capricorn, it keeps that behind closed doors because it doesn't necessarily see the full picture of the Virgo, what they're comfortable with. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, let's go to more cardinal houses. Let's go to the second. Talking about the 2nd, the 8th, the 5th, and the 11th. So straight onto the 2nd to the 8th. So the 8th house behind closed doors we talked about is when Gemini would like to initiate those structures, because it's like once it fully understands something or has a solid concept, that's how it expresses itself. But once it's starting something or it's being a big dreamer and it doesn't necessarily know how to fulfill it, I almost think it keeps that energy behind closed doors, because what it likes to do in its 4th house, where it feels more comfortable, is being able to break things down and explain them. So once they originally have this idea of this structure and they don't necessarily know how they're going to fulfill it yet, it's that's the energy that's behind closed doors. Or there's a lot of things that they had to do and a lot of structures that they had to initiate behind closed doors in order to have things run properly, in order to gain security and structure. Saturn. So yeah, versus the 2nd house, what they value is something that they'd really get lost in and initiate. So, you know, like Cancer, like the moon, so it's almost like this would be somewhere where, like, they find a lot of comfort in their values, right? But it's cardinal, so it's like moody. It's like, what are you going to find? It's what you want to find comfort in, right? So it's going to vary day to day. So yeah, it's almost like because they're Gemini and like they like to break down a lot of things and like to think about a lot of things, they're going to, like, what they value, they're going to get really deeply into what they care about originally, but or what they're utilizing, what they're playing with, what they're valuing, but seems like those things are subject to change, which makes sense. But it will be like a deep connection, and that will try in their other water houses. The 10th house, which is the energy that they're gonna receive publicly, like, and then the 6th house, Scorpio, like how they deal with things when they first break down. So if we talk about the other water houses, the 6th house and the 10th house, it's almost like 6th house, when something first breaks down, they're obsessive on how to fix it, which goes back to their Virgo nature. It's like, or their Virgo home life, where they feel comfortable breaking things down and analyzing them. So when something does break down, it's almost like an obsessive energy on how to fix that. And if they don't figure out how to fix that, then they'll just kind of move on, but it's like they're going to get to the bottom of it if it's possible, right? So yeah, and so either way, so what's going to happen is that might spark an obsession, right, which has to do with what they value, and this might play a role in, like, kind of the stories that they're telling at the moment, right? Like, there could be something new that happened, they discover a new logic that they really value and they're playing with, and then publicly, that's how they're received, depending on if it's good or bad. Like, I talked about how the 1st versus the 7th, like, generally, they don't really care, they're up in the air, they don't attach deep reasons and meanings to things, but once they go through enough relationship experiences or enough public experiences where they've gone through things emotionally and they've felt things, they've got burned inside and out, that what the things that they actually do end up playing with could be more positive, right, more spiritual, more effective emotionally, like more like utilizing signs and symbols to actually get something done versus just getting to know them, right? So yeah, so basically when they're playing with that, they'd really value what they're working on at the moment, right? The 2nd house Cancer, like, they'd really connect with that, and they'd also obsess over the 6th house, how to see that grow. Like the 6th house, when you gotta do something so that something can see its fullest extent, when you gotta come into a routine and pattern so that something has the nourishment it needs to grow. Like usually Virgos here in the 6th house. So it's like, if you need to develop a new schedule, it's like, okay, like, how do I need to do that? You know what I mean? Versus this would be Scorpio. So it's like, when something new pops up or they really need to take care of something new that they value, they'd be on that. So hopefully what they are valuing is positive, because they're obsessed over that, and then a lot of that energy, depending on if that's positive or negative, will come back to them in their 10th house and how they're seen. Like, they'll be seen for that. And yeah, so, and they'll get sucked into that emotionally. Like, they'll be seen for that, and they'll take that to heart. Like, they have Pisces there, so 10th house Pisces, like, getting stung emotionally, you know what I mean? And that's, and it seems like a lot of it could just be like they get sucked up into like not knowing what they want to do, right? So they could do a little bit of everything, or just get attached to something and then realize it's not for them and get burned. But it could also be like publicly they're seen as the things that they're messing with, right? The things that they value, the things they're obsessing over, is they're seen for that. And if they're not obsessing over creating something positive and they're obsessing over a structure that may be more so like just fun and like trickstery and be like pranking people, then they'll get the heat for that publicly, and they'll feel like, oh man, like everyone didn't support that, right? Or at least, I mean, because this is the energy behind it, maybe they won't necessarily feel that, but a lot of people will feel that, like that will be felt, right? So yeah, so that has to do with we talked about the second, what they value being kind of like fluid in a way, but once they do attach to a value, like the cardinal, like they're gonna come across things that they connect to and jump on that, versus like fixed knowing what they want and bringing that out, or mutable, just, you know, whatever comes is okay. This is getting attached to something new, right? Like, so like there seems like there's always a new thing that they're obsessing over, right? So yeah, 2nd versus the 8th when they're creating a new structure, right? Capricorn, they want that behind closed doors, like, yeah. Back at it. Sorry about that. I had to talk to my lovely boy fam, J-Man Jam. Okay, so if we go back to the houses, right? We just talked about the 2 and the 8th. The 2nd, what they attach to being something new that they like found this deep emotional connection to, like every month or every week or whatever, like that. And then we had the 8th house when they're actually developing a new structure, right? They want that behind closed doors because like they haven't completely figured that out. That's a big dream, and this is the person that likes to break something down and express that. So then if we go to the 5th house, how they like to express themselves, this would be Virgo, or not Virgo, Libra. So this will be someone that likes to express themselves when they kind of have the idea, the solid idea, right, and something that is attractive to them, because they're Saturn exalting in Libra along with Venus ruler, so they're not going to express themselves in something that they don't value, right? So it's almost like, and they may value, it depends on what they value, right? Maybe they value just getting along and getting to know new things. So maybe it's not necessarily they're expressing something they value, but they value kind of being in that situation, so they're utilizing words in order to be connected to what they value, right? But, yeah. So that's how they express themselves, which is more communicatively, like cold, like collected, whereas how they experience like coworkers and relationships like that, like when they get sucked into things publicly. So we saw that their 10th house is Pisces, so when they're actually viewed publicly, it's from an emotional setting, like either people are viewing what they did and are taking the emotional heat from that, or they're taking the emotional heat of what they did and how that repercussed on the world, right? So it's almost like, so say if we had, because we have Aries in the 11th, so if we had Libra in the 11th, this would be someone that, or more so with their associates, right? They just work on generating new ideas, but this would be someone that almost like figures out new ways to get together, like figures out new ways to party or something like that. But like more, not like house parties, but more so like business parties. Like this would be the type of person that figures out how to organize organize people in a new way, or it is Aries, so this is selfish action when it comes to who they organize with, right? Like they only pick certain people that they want to be around, and like they're not afraid to tell you no, right? Like Libra would kind of like slide out of a situation. Aries would just be like, no, like I'm out. This isn't for me. So basically, what they associate with publicly is just what they want to. It's not going to be like, oh no, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It's like, no, this is what I stand for. So it's going to be, deal with it. So that's like the 11th house, what they associate with publicly, versus the 5th, how they express themselves. So they express themselves more calm, cool, and collected, but who they want to be around publicly, it's like, no, it's you. So it's not you, you know. So then when we get to the, because that would be all of the cardinals, the 2nd, the 8th, the 5th, and the 11th. So if we get to the fixed signs, that would be the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, and the 12th. So straight off the bat, where they like to express themselves is in their day-to-day, right? Leo, ruled by the sun, is in their 3rd house, across from Aquarius in their 9th house. So it's almost like, It's almost like they're trying to get to know how to work with what's around as efficiently as possible, or as like charismatically as possible. Because it's like when you have the unseen in the 9th house, it's almost like fixed air. Yeah, it's almost like their purpose, ruled by Saturn, is in gaining structure and security, and like with having their own, like with their way of seeing things, which might actually be like their scattered way of seeing things, right? So like they look up to, depends on like what their purpose is, where their Saturn is, and like how individualistic they are, right? But this will be like 9th house being like more cold, like a lot of your expression and your purpose just comes to dealing with the things around, whereas like fixed air. So yeah, if we just think about the other air signs, right? So we have cardinal air in their 5th house of expression, and then we have fixed in the 9th house, and then we have mutable in their 1st house. So it's almost like through the expression they generate the idea, right? And then through like it's almost like their purpose is fulfilling that and seeing that through, right? So that would make sense. So it's almost like instead of like expression, it's more like understanding the fixed air, like understanding the symbol. So yeah, understanding the structure, right? Like the Saturn, but not like in a Virgo way. It's like what you're trying to bring out of it in a way, because like Virgo wants to understand every little piece like of a structure, whereas Aquarius just gets the symbol and the meaning of that, right? So it's almost like, I feel like it depends on where their Saturn is, but they definitely look up to gaining like structure and security, or their purpose is gaining structure and security like through like their words in a way. Like there's a lot of like looking up to that, yeah, gaining structure through your words and your logical systems, right? So yeah, so that would be the 9th versus the 3rd. What's always around is where they can like truly express themselves, and then once they're actually going to their purpose, it's like, well, like what is that? Like I know I like to do these things and those things, and like I relate with this thing, but it's kind of like that's something that they'd have to work on, where it's almost like how they express themselves in their 3rd house comes more natural. So yeah. So then if we go to the other fixed signs, the 6th and the 12th, we have Scorpio on the 6th, which we talked about a little bit. When something isn't necessarily working out properly, this is when they get obsessed over. Like when something breaks down physically, they get obsessed over, right? The Scorpio energy, the fixed water ruled by Mars, like intently trying to find new ways to work with that emotion and feeling, that fixed emotion and feeling. So it's like something bad happens, triggers their emotion and feelings, and then they're just trying to figure out, figure out new ways to deal with that, right? But once they actually figure out that that is a wall, and then get to their 12th house of limitations, and they figure out that there is no way forward, then we got Taurus rising. So it's almost like a melancholy, like, yeah, but that's just kind of how it has to be. Whereas like Taurus rising would throw a fit, having Aries in the 12th house, and Aries rising would take that deeply emotionally. This would be more so be like, oh yeah, practically that makes sense. And so maybe that would like, because their 12th house would support their 4th house and their 8th house. This would support like new understandings of what they can do at home and what they want to focus on understanding, like maybe that boundary they want to like decode. And then in their 8th house, behind closed doors, they're trying to develop structures around that, maybe to make things easier. Just like how the Taurus, they're just kind of try to like break through that structure or break through that limit and make sure that there's no limit anymore. Gemini is almost going to make it feel like that's not a limit anymore through how they can relate with it and physically what they could do around it. Like building a bridge, for example, like Gemini in the 12th house, they figure out, oh yeah, like there is water there, how do we work around that? 8th house, behind closed doors, they come up with the idea, we need to build a bridge. 4th house, they feel comfortable continuing to work on it privately, until they actually have a bridge there. So there's still the limit of the water, right? But they just incorporated that and figured out how to work through that. Whereas Taurus would have threw a fit and just went straight across. Like they would have just ran, and they might have made it, right? And they might have discovered a whole new way of getting across, but it wouldn't have been like an acceptance anyway. So yeah, that would be the 6th, the 12th, and the 3rd and the 9th. I don't know if I feel too satisfied with the description of the 9th house, though. It almost seems like because their 9th house is ruled by Saturn, right? And that has to deal with purpose. It's almost like their purpose isn't to be liberated, right? Isn't to be new and acting kind of new, which is their 3rd house, what's always around. It's almost like they're already so mutable and they're already understanding so much that their purpose is to figure out, like, to ground themselves, right? The Aquarius ruled by Saturn in a certain logic system. Like, hey man, like, we understand that you're always going to be splitting ends and you always want to understand this and that and both sides, right? And you're not really coming from a spiritual place and trying to give reasons and meanings to where you're coming from spiritually. It's more like you're just trying to understand logic. The Aquarius in the 9th house is almost saying like, hey, like, figure out who you are as an individual so that, like, you can, like, express yourself truly instead of just expressing through logics that you found from other people that you don't really care about. So that's my 2 cents. So that's Gemini rising, bubbling, coming in, crushing this, R.